What's up, y'all? What's good? Welcome to the What Up Though Show. It's your boy Dame D, and I am back with another one. Today, I'm going to be joined by audio with Real Talk with Big Dave. You can go in there, and even though I introduced you, you can go in there and introduce yourself again to the show, Big Dave.
It's real talk with Big Dave. What up, though?
There we go. There we go. Yes, Big Dave. I want to welcome you to the show again. Make sure y'all go over to Real Talk over there on YouTube, Real Talk with Big Dave, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. He's putting out great content all the time, every day. Yeah, Dave. I want to talk about this title I got up here today. It's um, being poor and the struggles of a single mother of three buying clothes and school supplies for going back to school. And this is kind of somewhat stemming from a conversation earlier that I had at work. A lot of my conversations, when I go live, kind of somewhat, like I say, stem from coming from work. But today when I get home from work, I was sitting here, just glancing through social media, going through a few videos, and I was watching Channel 4 News, and they were doing the school drive that they do every year, and it's been going on since I was a kid, you know what I mean? And they were doing the school drive for backpacks and school supplies for unfortunate kids, and parents who don't have the money, to be able to afford the right supplies that their kids need to go back to school. And I want to and I actually went live earlier about this, Dave. And I was having a few technical difficulties with my audio, but we got that figured out. But let me make sure we got it figured out. So let me go over to my page real quick and make sure that we can be heard. Okay, so we can be heard. I'm gonna turn that down. So, but yeah, man, I was watching Channel 4 was having, they were hosting a drive for the backpack and school supplies, and it just made me think of my childhood, when I was in school. Um hold on, let me turn this back. I hear a little back feed. But yeah, when I was growing up, going back to school, and the struggles that my mom had trying to provide for three kids, buying clothes and school supplies, because even back then, I'm not gonna say it's not expensive as it is now, but it can be expensive buying supplies for three kids, and it's just a lot of things that just watching that, and just like I said, having the conversations that I had back at work, today, it just made me think of my childhood. So if you can, before I give my my thoughts or my comments on what I think, the struggles of, just talk about the title, give me your opinion on what you think about you know um your thoughts on going back to school and how it was for you, when you went back to school.
Well, basically, I was blessed. I was very blessed and fortunate that my mother had a pretty good job at the time. It was just me and my brother and my cousin Reg. He's more like a brother than a cousin because he was always with us. We never had any issues with getting the things that we needed for school. So that's why I say we were blessed to be able to have my mother the way it was, because like I said, she did a lot of sacrifices and she did a lot of work and to make sure we had what we needed. And going back to school, man, for parents that don't have it, is rough sometimes. And they have to be able to catch up with these free programs where they doing charity for kids to get, school supplies and backpacks, because, if you're not there at a certain time, and you might miss out.
Yeah,
And
you know what
if
I'm
you miss out, your kid ain't got none of that.
right.
And these days and time, it was a little better back then if your parent had something going on because the money was flowing in America during that time. The value of a dollar was a dollar. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? A dollar would take you a long way. Like today is a little bit different the way things are because people in the 80s had money, 70s and 80s, they had money,
Right.
in the early 90s, you know what I mean? But today, Like my 9-year-old, when she go to school, today what the schools are doing now, they asking all the parents to donate something, paper
Right.
towel, Kleenex, and things like that. So if they run low in the school, they got extra.
Right. Right. Yeah. And first and foremost, man, I want to say thank you to all the people that donate, that get out there and volunteer to be able to raise um money and get out there and get the donations for the kids, because I can remember, and I'll go back and I'll give my testimony, about just, going back to school. We all were excited. All kids, mostly all kids are excited to go back to school. I remember my first day, but I'll just talk about, I'll get back to, just the school supplies and just remember, certain things. Coming from a single household, parent, I mean, single household, with, I have two other siblings that, I grew up with and went to school. So it was hard. We didn't get um, I'm not going to say the best of things, because my mom, she made sure that, we got what we needed to go back to school. But, I can remember certain times where, well, we probably didn't have the school supplies to, start off going back to school, so these programs that you talked about, that Channel 4, and like I said, this what, brought this conversation to a little bit for, I was watching Channel 4 News, and I want to give a shout out to them, because that definitely helps. They definitely been helping raise money for the kids to be able to go back to have the supplies and certain things that they need to be able to go back to school. Because I was one of those kids, that needed help. And my mom needed help, to be able to get school supplies and things like that. She always made sure that, we had the clothes and other things that we needed. But, these school supplies, for three kids, and now that I think about it, I'm like, that probably was pretty rough on my mom, having to do all that stuff alone, you know, um, by herself, so these programs and these things that they do for the kids going back to school, that's a great thing, now that I'm looking back at it, as an adult, because I didn't realize how poor, that we really were growing up as a kid. My mom made it happen, so, but yeah, before I get off a little bit more into the story, Dave, I'll let you finish talking about what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, like I said, man, single single mothers or any single parent is a lot on them because if they work, it's things that they got to sacrifice to be able to make it work for their child, or children. And when you got more than one, it's always a little more difficult. It's never that easy. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing when the parent can make sure you have things you need and you don't have to go through that, because the parents that have to go through that, they got to go through a lot just to get into these programs, just to find out about these programs. And like I said, if they miss out, their child might not even have a book bag or nothing to go to school with.
Yeah, because
And
listen,
that's
man,
not a real thing.
yeah, I'm gonna keep it real. I remember a lot of the programs that they had, in the Detroit public schools, and a lot of stuff. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I remember the first time my mama was like, she sent us to school. She was like, I need y'all to make sure that y'all ask y'all teachers for the good fellow box slips. This was a program for unfortunate kids that may need help, like during Christmas and stuff like that. I'm like, what's that?
Right.
The
Like
good
the
fella, and
Christmas
those these were
program.
good fella boxes that they gave you clothes, toys and candies, things like that for Christmas. So I don't even think they offer those programs no more in the state of Michigan or Detroit. But those were programs that I remember growing up. But yeah, man, it used to be certain situations like where as a kid where you would. I would be embarrassed. I'm not even gonna lie. When we talked about this at work, we talked about, and this like I said, this conversation is stemming from work also too. And some of the young women were in there talking about, how they kids were getting like $120 backpacks. I'm like, $120 backpacks. I'm like, I remember when my mama bought me my first backpack. You know what I mean? And it wasn't even a real backpack. It was like a for books that you carry like
Yeah, like
a
a book
motherfucking
bag,
doctor or some shit. It wasn't even
like a book bag.
the book bag that the other kids had, that they put on. Nigga I had a motherfucking real book bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
but yeah, man, so like I said, all this just remind me of my childhood, and just remind me how important, certain programs are beneficial to unfortunate kids, because I was one of those kids, and it's a lot of people that I went to school with that probably will see this and, and probably was an unfortunate kid too, and they'll be able to, you know, what's the word that I'm looking for? Relate to what I was going through and just how important these things are, because a lot of people may think that I get on women a lot, and that we be rough on women, and it's only because I know that our women can do better, and know better in a lot of certain situations, that they be wrong at, but this situation affects a lot of our youth, when they're going back to school. You know what I mean? This is something that's important. This is something that everyone needs to be involved in. If they can financially. You know what I mean? Because the kids are the future. You know what I mean? And I know what it means. And I know what it is not having the things that you need, for school, or just all that, far as just when it comes to going to school.
yeah. And, it's a big. It makes a big difference. Like I said, it makes a big difference, especially if you come from a household with the father and mother there. That makes another difference.
Yeah.
Um, and let's go back to what you were saying. The people that make good money, they, saying that their kids are having $120 backpacks. I mean, a backpack. Kids don't care about backpacks like that. Let's just be real. They kids,
Right.
man. They get, man. You go buy 'em one of them, Ninja Turtles or
Yeah,
something.
or Jansport. I'm like, shit. I remember the Jansport, or or
Yeah,
something like that. You know what I mean?
yeah. They got the little backpack, and it's okay to spend a little money on a good backpack for your child, but to go $120 and spend all that kind of
Man,
money,
I laughed. I said $120. I said my mama wouldn't have even thought about,
man,
spending no shit like that. I said
all
she
the
might have had,
backpacks gone through.
listen, the backpack that I remember that my mama bought me, I think I was probably in high school. I don't even remember having no backpacks from like from elementary to through middle school. The backpack that I remember that she did buy me, I still have that same backpack to this day. She might have spent like 30 $30 on it. It was like a nice leather backpack, but it wasn't even a backpack that you put around your back. It was a backpack. It was a book bag.
Yeah,
You
like I
know,
said, a book bag.
yeah. And
But
she did
like I
the.
said,
She did the best that she could do. At that time, it wasn't even a real book bag, but
but
I
see, the
still got that
thing is,
book bag, and I use it to this day. I put my camera equipment into it now. That was sentimental to
exactly.
me, and I took care of it. But yeah, man. And we also talked about, and I'm gonna ask you this question, Dave. And I'll say high school. How was it for you going back to school? In middle school. I'll say middle school and high school. Did you wear your Did you wear your first? And I'll just say like this. We talked about like how most kids probably wore their new clothes the first week of school. How was it for you? Did you come in that motherfucker funky fresh the first week of school?
Always.
What'd you
And
say,
like I
Dave?
said,
Always.
I don't say that. I
Right.
don't say that like I'm bragging or nothing.
Right.
I
No, I
swear
mean,
to
just
you.
keep it real.
Yeah, I'm just keeping it real. It just I was lucky.
Yeah.
I was
Ain't
blessed.
yeah.
And I was fortunate that my mother worked the way she did.
Right.
My mother made sure we had what we needed. But I'm gonna tell you what she did.
Hmm.
teachers. Soon as you get your ass in that house, you take that new shit off and put them hand-me-downs on
Right.
and go outside and play in that. Don't
Yeah.
play in them old shoes. Don't play in them old clothes. Because I'll be damn, I'll be going back buying some more stuff because you outside wrestling. And that's why I said about them $120 book bags. Kids don't respect that because they don't know how to respect
Hey,
their children. You
listen,
have
bro,
to teach them to respect it. Man, they
listen.
come, man, my daughter come in and she get in the car, she leave that bitch on the floor in the
Right.
car. And, man, they don't be caring about that shit.
Man, $120 backpack, like back in, okay, see, and I went to school. I was in the elementary school. I was probably in a in the early 80s, you know what I mean? I was born in 75, so in elementary I probably was like 1980, some shit like that. But I don't even remember having a backpack. You see what I'm saying? Honestly, from elementary all the way up until I remember having my first backpack that my mother bought me. You know what I mean? So and then it's just it's a lot, man. I ain't gonna sit here and just go tit for tat with everything I remember, but I just want to talk on the importance on how it is for parents to make sure that you putting up and you putting away, because August and September come around quick, and I think school is getting ready to start back, what, like in like a week, or if it's not getting ready to start back, but
No,
that
not in
comes
a week.
around
In a
quick,
few,
man.
in some schools some schools in a couple weeks. Some schools in about 3 weeks. Because most public schools start after Labor Day, and a lot of charter schools start after academy schools start after Labor Day, and some schools in the suburbs or whatever, they might go back a week before Labor Day, and then a couple days before Labor Day, and then they out because of Labor Day, and they go back. So school is near, and
Right.
right now they already got stuff out for school. But
Right.
like I said, it's a lot of programs out here that a lot of mothers don't know about. And it's up to us and people like us that can put them on our platforms when we find out about these programs so they'll know where to go. Because a lot of these parents, they work and they do other things and they don't have time to figure out what the programs are. And nobody told them. And then by the time they find out about it, you know what I'm saying? It's too late. They miss out.
Right.
So it's about trying to make sure these kids get what they need because today a lot of kids are suffering. A lot of kids don't go to school. They don't have folders, the spiral folders. They don't have the pencils because they give you a list what the kids should have when they come to school.
Man, and I'm gonna be honest, I was one of those kids, not saying that, you know, um, we were that poor that my mom couldn't afford to, but I remember, having to buy shit, buy I remember borrowing supplies from, my classmates or the teachers, or just didn't have that shit. You know what I mean? So
Real
um
talk.
and I'm not gonna blame my mom. My mom. It was just unfortunate. At times. Most of the times we did, but most of the times, I didn't. So I understand. What it is for these parents. When it is, because going back to school can be stressful. To a mother. To a parent, I should say. Having to buy multiple things, multiple clothes, especially for these kids of today, and that's just like we were talking about earlier. I'm like $120 for a backpack. I'm like, I'm like, my mom wouldn't even thought about buying no shit like that for us. You know what I mean? And I'm just gonna be honest, but time definitely has changed, but I don't think I could buy. I don't even. I have two other kids that I raised, but my daughter who I raised, I don't even I know I ain't buy no $120 backpack, but I made
Uh,
sure that she had the things that she definitely needed, because I know how it was when I was, growing up, going to school, and how it was for me and my siblings. So Dave, did you have any other do you have siblings?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Like I said, I have a brother, and then my one cousin, not I got other cousins, but my one cousin that's from my mother's sister, he always was with us, so he's more like a brother. Like I said, me and him was just talking. He's in California now. Me and him was just talking about this the other day, and he's like, "Man, you had everything.
Right.
You had everything." And like I said, I don't say that like I'm bragging. I was just blessed. That's all.
Nah,
I was
man,
just
listen,
blessed.
hey, don't do not speak your story. Do not be
Yeah.
afraid to speak because
No,
there's
no,
nothing
no.
wrong with, your mom.
I
Yeah,
ain't never scared to speak about it. I'm just saying I have to acknowledge the fact that I
right,
wouldn't have had that. I have to show appreciation to what my mother did to be able to, for me to be able to have them things. You know what I'm
right.
saying? A lot of kids today they don't understand how to appreciate things. You know what I'm saying? And that's why we have the problems we have with these kids growing up, getting into the things they get into because they don't appreciate what their parents have to sacrifice and do to get them the things that they need, even if it's not the best of things. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, no,
And
no, I totally understand where you coming from 100%, man. Because like I said, I grew up, my father was in my life. My father, had, certain things, issues that he went through, so he was not there. I'll be honest. So it really was just my mom raising, I have an older brother and a younger sister, which I have two sisters, but my youngest sister, she didn't come around until, well, and she's like 13 years up under us. You know what I mean? So really it was just us three, but yeah, man, I remember growing up from elementary. We were talking about this, David, and I did not even notice. I did not know Payless was closed down because I was talking about a situation, with my son. I'm like, my son noticed now, and he's getting ready to be 3 years old, because, I wear Jordans. I have a nice little sneaker collection, and so does my wife, and my son, he recognizes shoes now. He'll put his shoes on and he'll put his shoes beside mine. He'll be like, shoes, like, he
man,
got his shoes on. So he noticed that,
let me
eh,
tell you something.
go ahead.
When we was coming up, even the parents, like I said, even the ones that was fortunate and blessed like I was, and I don't think there's not a kid that ever stopped in Payless or Kenny Shoes. Remember Kenny Shoes in
Yeah, I
Memphis?
remember all that shit, man. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? It was just some things you just couldn't get away from, money or not. You know what I'm
right.
saying? Because it was just part of the community.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, like I said, man, I remember the time, I got three kids. I got my youngest and then I got two older ones. But I remember I remember my daughter was 4. I got her a Pelly, club soda Pelly. It was $420 for a 4-year-old.
Yeah,
What the hell was I thinking?
she was blessed.
Yeah, and then I thought when my son turned 4, I thought I had to return the favor, and I got him one.
Right.
Man, this is what taught me something. This taught me something, man. When I seen this little nigga outside on the yard wrestling in that coat,
Right. He ain't give a
all on the
fuck about
grass,
that.
I
What you
said,
pay?
I
What did you pay
said,
for it?
420.
Yeah, he didn't give a
I
fuck about
said,
that 420.
yeah, listen, I didn't understand the value of it.
Yeah,
Didn't understand it.
yeah,
Man, that right there made me think. I said, okay, no, you got to be smarter than this. You know what I'm saying? Now you throwing money away. You know what I'm saying? Just because you feel you have it. You know, wow. It taught me something because it's kids out here that don't have nothing, man. It's
fact.
just like in the winter they do the coke giveaways. The radio stations and stuff like
Yeah,
that. They do
yeah.
the coke giveaways every year also.
Right. Let's talk about it.
And if you didn't, if you couldn't afford a coat, that was bad because
Yeah.
how you gonna get to school and you ain't in the winter? You ain't got no
Yeah.
coat.
And listen, and that's and that's how bad it is for some people. It was never that bad for, me and my siblings to the point where, my mom couldn't afford, to buy us coach. That's some, you know, um, some crackhead type shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it happens, and I'm not trying to downplay that situation, but that was a parent who was total neglectful of your kids. Right here we just talking about, parents who may have not who was not neglectful, but just not, was not fortunate, to maybe to be able to get all the, school supplies and certain things like that, and the parents that, were able to get that, but no, we're not talking about the neglectful parents that, really didn't give a fuck, about their kids, because there was a lot of them out there, yeah, and a lot of people can relate and contest to this, but even that's unfortunate. That's why, we definitely need programs, like the programs that we had, like the coach for, I remember, growing up, coach for kids. I don't even know if that still exists, Dave.
Man, I don't. You know what? A lot of stuff probably don't exist these days unless somebody with money decide they want to do a giveaway.
Yeah,
It just things is just totally different from the times that I grew up and you grew up. Just things was totally different. Like today, it's just everything is all social media, man.
yeah,
And
and
I mean,
I'm actually, not to cut you off, Dave. I want to say this before I forget. I grew up on the east side of Detroit. Was raised on the west. Pretty much, my adult life. But I was born, and started off and raised on the east side. How many of you, remember the Goodfellow boxes? Those were for the poor and unfortunate kids. And I think about it today, me and my brothers, my siblings, we laugh about it today, about those, about receipt. And now we used to be embarrassed about getting it. You would have to go and get the receipt, I mean, not the receipt, but the actual the paperwork to be able to bring home to give to your mom so she can fill out, and you have to take it back to school. So I remember, my bad, Dave, but yeah, I remember
no, you
situations like
good.
that. So my question is, I want everybody to definitely comment, because I wasn't the only one who was getting them Goodfellow boxes. But yeah, I want each and everybody who remembers the Goodfellow boxes, and do they still exist, in the state of Michigan? You know what I mean? We live, so we definitely can, the comment section is open. But yeah, I want to know how many people remember those, and how many people got that, because those programs and things like that, were definitely very important, because what your parents wasn't able to get, those Goodfellow boxes supplied what they wasn't able to get. You know what I mean? You got I remember the underclothes, drawers, shirts, certain outfits. They would give you candy and some toys. You know what I mean? So these programs definitely are needed, and like I said, when I saw this on TV, it just reminded me, when we talked about it today at work, so I said this was definitely meant for me to talk about today. So but yeah, and I understand the struggles, for single moms when, going back to schools, because it's rough, because now with the prices, the price gouging, and then just, just how things have escalated, since we were going to school, Dave. Can you imagine, a family of, I'll just say four kids trying to buy school supplies and school clothes for their kids going back to school? Hello, Dave?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay, yeah,
I'm listening
so
to you.
yeah, my question is, I know the struggles how it was back for my mom, and growing up. Can you imagine, a parent of four, or three having to buy of today, having to buy school supplies and school clothes?
Man, listen, things are so high today, it's ridiculous.
Hmm.
When I say ridiculous, it is ridiculous. I mean, if you got more than two kids, it's like a danger zone. You know what I'm saying?
Man,
Man, because everything, listen, I went grocery shopping and I only went half grocery shopping because I was just getting the ins and outs that I ran out of.
right,
And just for that little bit of items, that stuff came up to almost $300, man.
right.
So I mean, picture a parent that have to get new stuff for their kids to wear to school every year, and they got more than two,
And now,
and
and
and and
go
and
ahead,
they
my
working
bad.
a job that's really. that they barely can pay their rent, man. That's hell.
Yeah, that's hell, because nowadays, man, these kids they want them J's, you know what I mean?
They're very expensive, but they
y-
man, for some reason,
yeah, you know,
for some reason they got a good eye for expenses and materialistic things. And if they can't get it, man, they act out.
Yeah, and honestly, man, and that listen, that's why, and I won't even get off into that. That may be for another conversation, but that was a lot of growing up, Dave. And you only a few years older than me, but that put a lot of pressure, on kids. The whole dressing and just all that, man, having to, what you wore to school, I should say.
Man,
Because
kids are kids are treacherous. Man, they will burn the other kid. You
hell
know,
yeah,
they
listen,
see
I
them with
remember
some
that. I've never
shoes
got
that's
burned, yeah.
wrinkled up. They see them with some shoes that's beat up, man. They call them bubblegum shoes, and
Yeah, yeah.
all kind. Kids is something else,
Yeah,
man.
see, because we was talking about that today at work. They got these Jordans, man, that's six rings that, really they call them Mexican shoes or, that I'm not gonna say they off brand because they're Jordans, but and I collect Jordans, but I don't wear the six rings, and these are just the cheaper brand of the Jordans, for I'm not gonna say poor or unfortunate people,
For
but
people that can, so people can afford it.
right, and that's what these are, you know what I mean? But they are
They
Jordans,
made something for the less unfortunate. You know, they
yeah,
just call it what it is. And
yeah,
Jordan's still getting paid.
right.
They made some because people been on Jordan ass because all his shoes is 200 and up, and people been complaining in the black community like, man, we help make you a billionaire, and you don't have no shoes that's affordable. Like you're giving back as far as making some shoes that people can afford. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, no, and he
So that's
definitely
probably
did
what
that.
that is. That's a give back.
And us as black folks, man, we clown that shit because today we were at work talking about that, and I admit to that I don't own any six rings or any of those. I said that I would never buy nothing like that, but now thinking back on this situation, this is going to change my mind, Big Dave. You know what I mean? Because I was one of those poor, unfortunate kids, who mom could not buy a pair of Jordans. My mom never bought me a pair of Jordans. I'm not going to say we had Nikes and things like that, but she never bought me a pair of Jordans. I had to buy my own pair of Jordans. Once I started working and stuff like that in high school, things like that. But yeah, throughout school, because that shit was, I can't remember how much it was back in our times when we went to school, but she never bought me a pair of Jordans. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Just I'm gonna tell you, man, life is just different these days. And whenever you can get blessed with something good, you got to be happy and appreciate it. And we have to teach our children this right now, because they will never understand the value of a dollar. They will never understand how to appreciate nothing because these kids today, they think you supposed to do this.
Oh my
They
God.
think you're supposed to give them these things. They don't understand that everything has to be earned.
Yes, and I'm glad you said
Everything
that.
has to be earned. I had to earn the things I got. I got an allowance, but I had to earn that allowance.
Right.
My mother never had to tell me to make up my bed. My mother never had to tell me to help do chores around the house and things that needed to be did. I just got up and did it.
Right. And
So, I
see,
understood that.
see, and you had a great parent, a great mom, and there's nothing wrong with, rewarding your kids in the right way, especially if they're doing the things right, the right way, like far as getting, good grades and, making sure that, they pass in their class and things like that. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, definitely, there's nothing was wrong with that. I want to give kudos to your mom, and I definitely want to give a shout out to my mom, because she made it happen, with the things that, with the card that she was dealt, I should say that. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, and I just want to get back to what I was saying earlier, how important it is to, for parents to be able to save, before, and start getting things way before school starts back, because most of the time those are when, you can go and find the best deals, so don't wait until, school, and that's why, you have certain situations where kids doesn't have school supplies and things like that, because these parents that we're talking about, the unfortunate, they'll wait to the end, maybe August, sometimes September to start buying school supplies versus getting them in July or, earlier, before the summer hits, or start saving up, investing in saving up or putting in layaways so it won't be rough, especially if you have multiple kids. Don't wait until August and September. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, man. Look, bro, I'm just sitting up here thinking, man, of things from the past, man, and just man, it I remember we used to walk to school, man. We didn't even at that time, sometimes we didn't even have backpacks, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
We used to
at
walk to
all.
school and we used to walk to school with folders and books in our hand, man.
Right.
And stuff like that because it wasn't like that at that time.
Right. See, and that's crazy that you say that, Dave. That's what I remember. We had just folders and books. I don't remember backpacks, until really into
No,
high
see, because
school.
in our time we wasn't, they weren't making no backpacks like that for no kids.
Right. Well, you know what?
You
Maybe
know,
that's what it was. Maybe that's probably why I didn't have a backpack because I didn't remember that.
no, they weren't making backpacks and stuff like that during our times. We were, so remember we was carrying metal lunch pails to school, bro.
Right.
It,
Hey, listen.
I'm talking about the kids.
Hey, listen. You know what? Hey, please remind me the people that I went to school with, because I'm thinking like, damn, was we just that fucked up that my mama couldn't buy
Listen,
us no goddamn backpack?
yeah, right. Now they said right because they didn't have no damn backpacks then. Shit, you gotta remember we come in the air. We had no goddamn microwaves.
Yeah.
Man, everything we had it was warmed up in the oven on top of the motherfucking stove.
Yeah.
We didn't have no damn microwave, and maybe that was the best thing, than using that radiation. But yeah, man, when we like, my mother, they said she made too much. So, what I'm saying, we had to pay for our lunch. And
Nigga.
the days that we didn't pay for lunch,
Right.
we had our own lunch pack.
Right.
And we had still, lunch boxes with superheroes on it and
Yeah,
stuff
nigga,
like that.
we was free lunch. You see what I'm saying? All the way, baby.
Yeah, no, see, I couldn't get that free lunch, but I tell you what, when I paid for my lunch, I got that extra chocolate milk or that ice cream
Yeah,
sitting
man.
there, man.
Listen, we was free lunch, baby. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna even lie. From elementary all the way through high school.
Hey man, hey man, listen. I used to try to keep my money on the days that the days I didn't take the lunch. I used to try to keep my money and be like, I do get free lunch. I don't
Right.
know why. I put up a damn argument, man, because I wanted to keep my money to buy extra chocolate milk and ice cream. Because you had to pay for that stuff. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? But yeah, man, I remember them days, man. I had a metal lunch pail, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, was it a Superman? I can't remember which one it
And
was,
I
but
remember them days. I remember I had a metal lunch pail,
yeah,
too. I
and
remember them days. Yeah, with the
yeah,
look with
man,
the
and
little
like I
cooler
said,
in it.
yeah, we walked to school.
Man.
It didn't matter if it was snow. It didn't matter if it was a blizzard. We
Right.
walked
You
to
had to. It
school.
wasn't no bus or no none of that.
No,
You had to
man. And the
walk.
schools wasn't closing because
Never.
it's cold, it's raining hard. Man, listen, man.
These
The
kids of
days
today
used to
got it
be,
made.
man, but that's what's making them soft, man.
Right.
That we got more whiners than we ever had, man, because they think things are should be. I mean, they think things should be given to them than them earning anything.
And
They
I'm
got their
glad.
hands out, but they don't want to do nothing. They don't want to do a chore. They don't want to make up their bed. These days, man, you got to fight with kids. and they get their butt in the showers, you know.
Yeah, and that's crazy that you say that because a lot of this was stemming from, like I said, work. I was with one of my coworkers. We were talking about, her kids and how I'm not gonna say spoiled, but how she was saying, certain things like what she needed or what she wanted for school. I'm like, what? I'm like, ain't no. I'm like, shit. My mom like you gonna get what she got you, and that was it. And what she budgeted and what she was able to get at the time, So, but yeah, these kids of today are definitely blessed, are definitely spoiled, and like you said, Big Dave, definitely soft.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
in these days of time, man, these kids don't want to walk. They don't want to do nothing. But and then let's look at that the other side of reality, man. It's hard to let your kids walk to school. It's too many goddamn perverts out here, man.
yeah,
There's too many people out here grabbing kids and waiting on kids, and it was happening in our day, but nothing like it is today.
yeah, that's
Like,
crazy that you say that because
you
I
know
was
what I'm
just,
saying? Because we didn't when I was growing up, they didn't have that. I remember when I went to school, man, remember the blue pigs, man. The blue
yeah,
pigs
the
used to come
police. I
perform
remember
at
that they came to the
Fitzgerald
schools.
Elementary on Pearson, man.
Yeah.
And we used to see the blue pigs and what's the motherfuckers, the Mancho Man. Man,
See, hey,
them
listen, hey,
things, man.
listen, you a real Detroiter, because I remember I used to go to Stairwagon. They came, if you went to Stairwagon, shout out, I mean, you were definitely a real Detroiter, Dave, because a lot of people don't know nothing about the Blue Pigs, but they came to our elementary school. They had like a little band, but they were the
Yeah, they had
police.
a band. It was police
Yeah,
band.
they was the
And
police.
they had
Yeah,
their own band. They
yeah.
called them the Blue
The Blue
Pigs.
Pigs, I remember that. So you definitely, I
Yeah.
remember that, my baby. You see what I'm saying? So you definitely a real, you know that, But yeah, man. Go
Who was
ahead.
the guys, the Sun YMCA, man? They came and performed,
Yeah,
We used to have live performances at schools. We used to have the dentists come to the school back then. Give you this pill to make your teeth red, and then you brush your teeth
right.
and get rid of the red.
I
We used
remember
to
all
have,
that. Yeah,
yeah, they used to have them kind of programs. Like today, they don't have none of that.
probably not. They don't cut a lot.
No, they don't have none of that.
Yeah,
They don't got the people coming to perform for the kids and stuff. Like I said, things are totally different the way they do things. Like I said, today when school start, when we get our child's supplies, she has a note from the school
of what
what to
y'all need to
bring
get.
back, like
Right.
Kleenex or
Hmm.
toilet paper or paper towel. You know what I'm saying? And the
See, and I
parents will
remember
have
that
to
because
buy
that's how it
these.
was when my daughter went to school. But go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, the parents will have to buy these things to send back, and they do this in case they run out of the things they already have.
Right.
So we have to contribute to it so we don't run out.
Right.
I ain't never had to deal with nothing like that as
Mm,
a kid. You know what I'm saying?
right.
It's totally different now.
Yeah, it is. And I understand now, because what up though, BJ3? He said kidnapping numbers were higher in the 80s than now.
I mean, maybe they were, but you didn't hear about it like you
Well,
do now.
yeah, well, maybe he was talking about like far as walking to school.
Yeah, but I'm saying you didn't hear about it as much as you hear about it now.
Right. See, and listen, I know
Because
BJ3.
we have social media now. We have cameras everywhere. People got the ring. You know what I'm saying? It's reported more than it used to be reported. Not
Right.
saying it didn't happen, but you didn't hear about it as
Right.
much as you do now.
See,
That's
now,
what I'm saying.
and I'm glad you came in and commented BJ3 because I know you may be able to um be able to not recognize, but do you remember the Goodfellow boxes?
relate.
Is what I'm trying to ask you. Growing up in elementary and middle school, do you remember those programs? For the unfortunate kids, which I'm not going to say you didn't come from a single household because you had your dad in your life, but you did also come from a single parent household. So, do you remember the Goodfellow boxes? Did you remember? Did you receive any of that help? Or any of those? But go ahead, Dave. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to ask BJ3 that.
No, you good. You good. You good, man. Listen, we talking. Sometimes people gonna get cut off because everybody, everybody can't remember their thoughts. I can, but
Right.
we gonna, like I said, we gonna get cut off because sometimes we get to talking, we go back and forth, man, because everybody want to make a point and make sure that nobody misses it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
I'm glad BJ came in and said that, but I wasn't saying it wasn't there. What I'm saying the difference is today, you know about it more today. It's reported more today, and it's different. But we, even though it was happening, we still went to school.
Right. Oh
We
man,
still
listen,
had
nigga,
to
we
go
had
to
and
school.
BJ3 can relate to this. There wasn't nothing, no buses or nothing like. We had to walk everywhere we went. Um,
No, we
yeah,
didn't have no buses picking us up from school.
hell
It was
no,
walking, man. It
at
was
all.
walking.
You had to walk. Journeys. BJ, okay, BJ3 made a
Yeah,
comment. He said, big block cheese, canned beef. You talking about the Focus Hope, and we talked about that work about a couple of weeks ago. Getting free lunch and at Chandler Park. Wow, you know what? That's crazy. And we was up there, baby, getting the free lunch at Chandler Park in the summertime. And if you remember that, I need y'all to comment in the comment section down below. Getting the free lunch at Chandler Park, in the summertime. I remember that BJ3. And Big Dave, I remember. I wish East Skeezy was with us because I remember a episode. When me and East Skeezy first saw each other, and it was six. He had seven siblings. So it was
okay.
rough for them growing up. And I remember that we bumped into each other at school at lunchtime. And I got a story about that. It was crazy. They had served us up some tacos and shit. It was crazy. But yeah, man. But BJ3 said he remembered. He said big block cheese, the canned beef. That was the focus. So we talked about that at work a while ago. Do you remember the Farina, Big Dave?
Yeah, I remember all that kind of stuff. Like I said, my mama couldn't get none of that stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Unfortunately, I had relatives that got it, so I was able to have it. You know
right.
what I'm saying? We got the cheese because I had cousins in them that got it. My mother, our neighbor used to they when they needed cigarettes, man, shit. My mama would give them money for cigarettes, and they would give us a couple blocks of cheese. That made the best griddle
Man,
cheese.
that
That made
cheese
the
was
best
the
macaroni
shit.
and cheese. That made the best cheese toast. That made the best cheese eggs. That made the best, grits
Yeah.
with some cheese, man.
Yeah, man. Listen, that cheese and BJ3 said the grits, but it was for Farina BJ3. Yeah, which was grits. It was actually better than grits. It was the Farina. He said I got
That's because
Buster
people was putting
Marquette.
sugar in it.
BJ3 said he got Buster Marquette. Marquette was out of the school district, I think. You was lucky, because we had to walk
Yeah, I know about
everywhere.
Marquette.
Yeah, we had to walk everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
everywhere.
man. Yeah, what up, B? What up, BG?
Yeah, especially on the east side, nigga, we
You'll
had
be
to walk
hearing from me in the
everywhere.
next day or two, bro. I promise.
Yeah. But nah, man, I just want to talk about this situation. I need for you guys to like, comment, subscribe, and share. But no, I just want to talk about this situation, about because like I said earlier when I was watching the news, it reminded me growing up as a kid, Dave, and it struck a nerve, and I thought about how it was for my mom and how it was for my siblings, not being able to have everything that we needed going back to school. And I'm not gonna say because my mom did everything that she needed to do as a parent. Um, it was just certain situations where we didn't have everything that we needed going back to school, like far as with supplies and things like that. She made sure that we were always dressed nice and had clean clothes and things like that. But I can remember the struggles of supplies and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But back like I said, once again, back in our time, you know, we carried our folders to school, and you had that little rubber thing inside there where you keep your erasers, all your pencils, and it's connected to the folder. The folder snap on the ends,
right.
with the little metal in the middle. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And yeah, we didn't need a book bag.
Right.
You had your lunch pail, you had your folder that snapped, and you had a bunch of different things in that folder.
I remember the Trapper Keepers. Remember the Trapper
Yeah,
Keepers? Yeah.
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 And yeah, man, there was the days, man. Like I said, man, we had jingle boots, man. They wasn't the warmest boots, but they looked good.
Right.
They
Remember the
looked good.
remember the kangaroo boots?
They came out later, and the kangaroo boots was a hot sale when they came out,
Yeah,
man, because they
man.
was more they was warmer
Yeah.
than jingle boots. Jingle boots just made noise because there was a buckle on there. That you
Right.
never
I
buckled
remember
them up
those.
because they
We
never
I didn't have
came.
a pair of jingle boots, but I think I
Yeah,
had a pair of the kangaroos.
I remember we used to wrestle, and act the fool just to hear them jingle.
Right. Yeah, I remember them.
But yeah, when they came with the kangaroos, it was different, man, because they was actually warm, to a degree, and they,
Hmm.
you know, they they
No,
they took
those
the
were
world by
real warm.
storm. Yeah,
If
they
I can
took the
buy a
world
pair of
by
them now
storm.
today, I would. They was
Yeah, them
definitely warm and
kangaroos
they
took the
was
world by
slick.
storm, man.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Max Julian?
Oh, man, who don't? But which I'm not gonna say I had one, but I remember 'em.
Yeah, but yeah, man, just like I said, man, you have to teach these children to appreciate what they have when they get it, because this is the era today where kids are, they carry their iPods, their AirPods, I mean, they iPads in them book bags.
Yeah, these kids of today are definitely more. I'm not. Do you think they're more materialized than we were, Dave?
Um, I wouldn't say they are, because half of the time they don't know half of the stuff that they want. But see, they more materialistic when it comes to electronics. iPads and AirPods, and they want the latest iPhone. They want, stuff like that. Um,
BJ3 said that nanny goats. I remember them too.
man, I had a damn nanny goat and a sheepskin,
Right.
man, and they both was brown.
See, and see, with my mom, we could never afford none of those. But I remember Reggie and Ray Ray, they had all that shit, and this was BJ3, his step brothers, but they had all that,
But
But I
listen,
remember that the Adidas with the snake skin on the side, all that stuff.
man, listen. My mom um said, "I'm not gonna buy you both, one or the other." So my mom brought the sheepskin. I'm
Right.
about to tell you how I got the nanny goat. Man, I shoveled snow from dusk to dawn. I remember, and we didn't even know you was getting dehydrated by putting plastic over
In
your
your socks,
socks and
yeah.
your shoes.
I think we talked about
Man,
this, Big Day.
yeah, man. I went and shoveled snow from dusk to dawn, and I made $200, man.
Hmm.
And I went and got that nanny goat. So my
Right.
mama bought one, I bought the other one. But see, like I said, these kids today, they not like that.
Right.
They're not gonna go shovel snow. They're not gonna go rake the leaves. You got a select few. But for the most part, they're not gonna go cutting grass, going block to block, trying to make money. You
Mm-mm.
know, they just waiting for handouts, because think about it, it's the parents that make it like that. You putting tablets in 2-year-olds hands as the babysitter. And
Yeah.
that's so they grow up thinking they got to have the latest electronics. The little girls, they want all the little stuff that they think is popular. You know what I'm saying? And the boys, so to a degree, they're more materialistic than us when they understand it, but it's totally different from us. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I know. I get you. Because BJ3 can
Because they
contest to
stuff
this.
costs an arm and a leg, man.
Right. I remember that BJ3 because BJ3, he can contest to this. Everything that, we wanted extra, because our parents wasn't going to go and buy, no motherfucking Max Julians or no Nanny Ghosts. We got what we needed. So if we wanted extras, we had to go out there, like you said, Dave, and get jobs. Like, and BJ3 can test to this, nigga. We be out there sun up to sundown, shoveling snow, raking leaves and shit like that to earn money. But BJ3 said I bought Gucci shoes in 8th grade off cutting grass. I was helping pay bills by 6th grade from leaves, snow, and grass cutting.
See,
Facts.
see, we already knew that.
And before I even read that, I said that, I remember that, we would be out there from sun up to sundown, shoveling snow, raking leaves, and cutting grass. I even remember this, Dave, on the east side before we um moved to the west side, and this was a hustle that, we didn't even know about. This was one of our neighbors. He took us up to the gas station and they was hustling, pumping people gas back then, before now the crackheads and shit don't take over jobs like cutting the grass and, all the things that we talked about that we had as kids. Those were kids' jobs, which the crackheads, had took over, at one point, But I remember that, Dave, on the east side of Detroit on Grasher, pumping people gas. You know what I mean? To hustle for money.
Yeah, we just grew up as purified hustlers when it came to certain things. We didn't mind knocking door to door to make
Yeah.
our money to get what
Yeah.
we
To knock
wanted.
on doors,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. And today it's like these kids they raised with electronics.
Right.
They get put in their head at the age of 2. So why do they want to go cut somebody's grass? And why do they want to go shovel somebody's snow? You know what I'm saying? 2 years old, they looking at the damn iPad or a tablet, and they learning how to work it, by looking at the same thing on there.
Right. Hey,
So
and
why
that's
would they be interested? You
hey,
know,
remember, listen, and this and this just hit me, and I want to say this to all the people. Remember the candy sales, Dave, that we used to have as kids?
yeah, you talk about Kool-Aid sales
Yeah,
and
and now when the school send you with a list, and you with
oh
candies and shit on it, and you take it out to your peoples and you try to sell it.
yeah, man. I used to just
Listen,
eat that damn
listen,
stuff.
I want to apologize,
Man,
to all the people who didn't get their goddamn candy. Listen,
man, listen. Man, I remember when they used to have the M&Ms, the plain and the peanuts, and I was selling
uh,
it for Coach Menifee, man, and the chips. Man, I used to take them boxes home, man. I be fucking that candy up, man. Excuse my language, but man, I go to work on that candy, man. That motherfucker, I was short every time with paying him. He said, "You know what, man? You're fired, man.
hey.
You're not selling anything else."
We never even turned that shit in. My mama would take the candy, but
Man, that shit was
I
crazy.
promise you, bro. And I remember it was one of the days where it's like, he's like, "Where my candy at?"
Hell no.
And for years, that nigga used to always say that. But I remember that, man. Growing up as a kid, it was crazy, but that shit was crazy. What BJ3 said, yeah, man. Let me. But it was crazy. I remember that. My mom would take the goddamn candy money, and we would never turn the goddamn list back into the school.
Hell no. Yeah, that was dangerous having kids sell candy back in the day.
Yeah, yeah,
That was dangerous, man. I'm telling
yeah.
you, because
That's
you get the
crazy, man.
urge, you get the urge,
Uh,
man,
oh my
and
god.
you're going to
I'm
eat
looking
one.
crazy as hell. But look, I'm telling some real shit, real stories, that, a lot of people probably wouldn't tell, growing up, but those are the trials and the tribulations of growing up, poor with a single mother of three, things like that, but yeah, I remember the good, I remember the bad, but like I said, at the end of the day, these kids of today are definitely blessed, and I definitely make sure that, and I have a young son now, which is crazy, but I'm definitely going to make sure that, he definitely don't have to go through the struggles, that I went through, when I was growing up and I was a kid, and that's what it's all about. BJ3 said that's hilarious. Yeah, man. I remember all that. I got plenty of stories, that I can tell, but those are just some of the stories and some of the things that I remember, growing up, as a kid, going to school, in situations like that. And
Yeah,
when my brother and sister see this, they'll be able to comment, and can contest to this, and a lot of people
anybody
will
that's
too.
yeah, anybody that's watching, especially the ones that's from where we from,
Yeah,
if they was on here, they would definitely comment because all everything we talk about is related to our
yeah.
era. You
And
know what I'm saying?
I got a few people watching, and I'm gonna ask you guys this again. Who remember growing up in Detroit, the Goodfellow boxes? You know what I mean? Though these were programs for unfortunate kids who parents may didn't have everything for Christmas. And I remember that. I remember, like I said, Dave. Our mom would tell us to bring these notes, these slips home that she had to fill out, for certain clothes, and they gave you underwear and things like that. So I just want to go back and see who all remember those programs and things like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I'm not gonna hold you guys up long, Dave. Excuse me. I know you have. I know you don't have a long day. I just want to come on, and talk about. BJ3 said the kids are softer because of us. And I agree. Because at the end of the day, it's all about
Well,
it's
I'm
all.
not gonna take responsibility for that because I didn't do that with my kids. I made my kids go out and do things. These I'm talking about it's these parents today that's the reason why these kids are soft because they are kids they damn self.
Yeah. And I can contest to that, but I agree with BJ3, because most parents, probably, especially if they went through the struggle, they definitely do not want their kids to go through what they went through. And I definitely wouldn't want my kids to go through what I went through, growing up. You know, poor and unfortunate, and I remember this, and I didn't think we was poor, Dave. I remember my uncle, he was telling us, my uncle Blaine, he was like, man, yeah, poor. I'm like, how? And I really didn't realize that, until I became adult. My mom, she did what she needed to do, but at the end of the day, growing up, we didn't have everything that, that I'm not gonna say that more. We had what we needed, put it that way. But like I said, seeing these programs and the school supplies, it just reminded me of certain situations when when I was growing up, going back to school, not having everything that I needed, because I remember times that in high school where shit, nigga, I had to borrow paper from motherfuckers or pencils, or I just didn't have shit that I needed, and maybe half of it was me, not bringing the shit that I needed to school, and the other half probably was my mama. BJ3 made a couple more comments. He said, now they're raising their kids better than than we were raised. At least that's a go. And I agree with you, BJ3. And that's I think everyone's goal is to do better than what your parents did and to be better parents than what your parents were. You know what I mean? At the end of the day.
That's the way it should be, but
Right.
it's not always like that.
No, it's not always like that.
No, that's the way it should be, but it's not always like that. It's just these kids are coming up in a different era than us. The era that we came in, our parents sacrificed a little harder for what they needed to do to make sure we had the things that we needed. Like I said, I didn't have a father in my life. I knew who my father was, but he wasn't around like that. But
Same
my
for
mother and
same
dad
for
made
me.
sure we had the things that we needed. And I'm not saying every mother today is like messed up that they kids are not learning or getting the things that they need, but for the majority of them, they just let these kids do whatever they want, and the system helped make it like this, too. So it's just totally different today.
All right.
So it's supposed to be like that. You should want more, your kids to have more than what you had. You should want your kids to live a better life than what you had to live. So of course you should, but it's not always like that. These kids are very soft, man. Yeah, he right. It's because of their parents. It's because of their parents. Their
But can
parents done
but
left
can you
them
but
stuff.
can you blame on though, Big Dave? Especially for for the poor and unfortunate kids that grew up, especially for them to grow up and be successful and make sure that they kids did not have to go through what they went through. Because I'm not going to say that we were we was poverty, but we definitely was poor, and I definitely try to make sure that when I grew up or I was able to do for myself that, I made sure that, I did the things for myself. And then, for my children and for my kids is just try to make sure that, I'm there for them and for my young one now, I'm definitely going to make sure that he has the things that he need when he's, getting ready to go back to school. You know what I mean? Like a
Of
backpack.
course.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, you brought a few things to my mind, Dave. Maybe backpacks probably when went to school. I ain't gonna say didn't exist, but I don't know. But I don't remember having a backpack.
Yeah, we wasn't wearing them like that back
Right.
then because things was a little bit different. But right now, that's the hottest thing around. You got people wearing grown ups wearing
Yeah,
backpacks.
I wear a backpack to work every day. You know,
Yeah, so things
yeah.
is totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And BJ said we were poor as fuck. It's not a bad thing, but he said, hold on. He also
no,
said, so Dave, he said, giving your children a better childhood than you by being there so they get spoiled by that, but that by dad softer is not a bad thing. So yeah, I agree.
right?
Yeah.
No, no, it's not a bad thing at all.
Because my son, like I said, he's already recognizing shoes, but I'm definitely going to, and like I said, we were having this conversation at work about Payless. I didn't know Payless didn't exist no more. That's so
Yeah,
far.
I was talking about that in a barbershop the other day. Payless has been gone.
Wow. See, that's so far how far I'm behind because I was talking about that. I was like, I'm gonna make sure that that he know about because I wore pearl wings. A lot of people don't I remember pearl wings, Dave. Do you remember those?
I, I never had them, but I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
I know about them.
Nigga, I don't wear pro BJ3. Have you ever had a pair of pro rings? I don't have a pair of pro rings. I ain't gonna lie. I'm gonna keep it real.
Hey,
Maybe one or
I
two
mean,
pair.
you know what? It's nothing to be humiliated about. The way that you had to,
Yeah,
because
I ain't humiliated
everybody
about it.
household, everybody household was different. I
BJ3
seen the
said no.
struggles.
I
No, I never had a pair,
had a
but I
pair of
know
pro
it's
rings.
yeah, I know kids that had them, and I never talked about them because
See,
they
but we
didn't.
was in the elementary. I didn't have them in high school or nothing like that. In high school, we stayed fresh, you know. But I remember having pro wings
Yeah,
in
pro
elementary.
wings was done about time you got to high school.
BJ3 said I had one pair of shoes for the me too. You know, we did too growing up, and they was pro rings. You know, but in high school, I remember, yeah, you know, it would be one pair of shoes, maybe, you know, two, you know, but they was, you know, like Nikes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But no, I remember,
Yeah,
you know, in elementary, probably kindergarten, elementary, first through maybe third grade, probably wearing pro rings. You know, especially on the east side, you know, it was pro, we was pro wing down on the east side. You know, yeah, I promise you, you know, pro wing down, you know, I was at least, you know, I don't know what Big Ken was wearing, my older brother, you know, but we was wearing, you know, maybe me and my younger sister, we was definitely wearing pro wings. Yeah. You know, but
yeah.
man, hey, listen, the struggle be real sometimes. Listen, I remember shit. You know,
Shit,
and I talked about this before, you know, shit, being out there playing sports, nigga, baseball with gym shoes on with no cleats.
man,
I promise you. You know,
man,
they like they out there balling like I had on cleats. I
hell
promise you.
no,
I've got teased like I think I don't got into fights before over that. You know, growing up on the west side. You know, we had it was crazy, man. You know, growing up, you know how kids were. We had to fight the whole neighborhood growing up from the east side over to the west side. When we first got to the west side, we had to fight the whole neighborhood to prove, you know, ourselves. You know, and all the people that we grew up with over on the west side now. You know, but you know, me and my brother, boy, even my sister, she had to fight too. It was rough, you know. So definitely.
yeah.
You know, so
We can relate to a lot of things, man.
man, I can relate to a lot. You know, but BJ3 brought up a lot of memories too when he said going to Hamilton for the free lunch in the summer. BJ3, I remember that we didn't miss a day. And I remember some of my friends, we used to always go up there to Hamilton School in the summertime for the free lunch. Yeah, yeah,
Man,
yeah.
what a day! What some days? What is some days?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey,
You know, that's before my mom. You know, that was like, you know, that's when it was rough when my mom and dad had split up. You know, when we was on the east side, and before things got better for her, before she moved on the west side. You know, I should say, because things definitely got better for my mom once she moved on the west side and, you know, was able to, lift herself up a little bit more. You know, but definitely the struggles was real on the east side, man. You know, I remember all that, probably not having the best school supplies or even dressed the best, you know what I mean? You know, so but a lot of help came from, family members, my especially my grandmother, maybe, definitely, my Uncle Bunky and things like that would, helping out with maybe hand me downs and things like that, but yeah, I remember a lot of stuff. Yeah, the struggles, I should say.
yeah,
Yep.
the struggle is always real.
Yeah, it's definitely real, So I definitely want to, this goes out to the parents, make sure that, at the end of the day, that you're getting ahead of, going back to school and school supplies and, putting stuff up months before it's time to go back to school and don't get, have your kids out there getting caught up late with not having the right supplies or things like that. And then, like you said, Big Davis, too many programs out there now. that help the kids get the supplies and the help and the things that they need to go back to school.
You just got
So
to find them. You just got to
yeah,
be
to
on
find the
top of
resources. Yeah, so
it.
quit
You
being
just got to be
lazy.
on top of
A lot of parents be lazy in that looking for the resources and the help that they need, which they're out there. Which they're all been out. Because like I said, growing up in BJ3, he can contest to this. We took advantage. My mom made sure that we took advantage of all the programs that that we could. That was out there to help us. Yep. So look, man, it's getting late. BJ3, man, I'm gonna read this last comment. I'm gonna go ahead and end it. He said, "I went to Hamilton, sixth and seventh grade. They did a surprise police check. They had metal scanners at the door. They found guns and knives. I got accepted to Dorothy Fisher, which I remember Dorothy Fisher, in the seventh went to the seventh and eighth. Okay, I remember that. Yeah. Listen, I remember Jackson. Jackson was so rough on the east side. But that's another conversation, man. I don't want to but yeah, BJ3, I remember all that. But yeah, I'm not gonna hold you guys up long. I know shit it's 301. So I don't want to talk too much. I just want to, talk about this situation. Like I said, Channel 4, they definitely doing a great job. I want to commend them, for doing a great job they've been doing over the years for helping raising the kids, all the other people that raise coach for kids, toys for tots and things like that. It's definitely beneficial to the kids because at the end of the day, it's about the kids, it's about the youth, making sure that they get the things that they need. Because I once was one of those unfortunate, kids coming from a single household that my mom, wasn't able to get all the things and necessities that we need. So these programs are definitely, important. So those who are able to give, to certain organizations, make sure that you able to give, to these different foundations that that give to kids. That gives back to kids that's unfortunate. But Big Dave, give me your last words on everything, and then once you're done, let everybody know what you got going on and where they can reach you. Big Dave.
Yes, 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 yes. Man, I'm sitting up here thinking about all kinds of stuff, man, at the end of it. But yeah, man, it was a good time talking about these old days because it's a whole lot of memories. BG brought up a lot of good stuff. You brought up a lot of good stuff, and it was some valid points. And hopefully, everybody that listened or watched this show, whenever they watch it, they can relate to it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people going to be relate to it. It definitely was a good show, a good talk. Let everybody know, man, where they can reach you. And what you got going on, big dog.
Okay, you can reach me on YouTube, Instagram, um, and TikTok. Real Talk. That's one whole word. WIT. Big Day. I'm a podcaster on YouTube. Go to my channel. Make sure y'all subscribe, like, and share it. And you can get me on Facebook. Real Talk. I mean, on Facebook, Big Day Crawford.
There we go. There we go. And again, I want to thank you for coming on the show talking. And BJ3, I want to thank you for making your comments. And then at the end of the day, I want to get back to, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna go in there and close out. But parents, make sure that you get ahead of going back to school. Making sure that you put a few dollars to the side, or not even doing that. Making sure that you're buying supplies here and there over summer break to make sure that you're ahead of the game, before prices go back up, because all the prices are going to skyrocket back when it's time to go back to school in August and September. So just get ahead of things, so therefore, it won't be such as hard, trying to buy these supplies and things for your kids, because it's definitely a necessity. It's definitely a need. You definitely don't want to have your kids embarrassed, going back to school, not having the things that, that they need, and then them watching the other kids having the things that they need, because like I said, I'm not going to say, you know, we were, I remember certain things, I'm not going to say we didn't have everything that we needed, but we didn't have everything we needed. So I remember, being one of those kids not having, everything I needed, so I'm not going to hold you guys up long. It's been another one. It's your boy Dame D, and I am out. Peace.
Peace.